I would argue even that the totality of the Big 12 is better than everybody minus the top 3 teams in the Big 10. And that's how you get schedules like that Indiana is playing this year. It's no knock on Indiana at all. I think they're a very good team because they're winning games by 33 points per game right now. You can't argue with that. But it's also a crap schedule. You can't argue with that either. That is where we come to with this. So a guy named Buckeye Legion, you can guess where his loyalties lie here in all this, came at me with this when I took a little shot. I took a little pot shot at the typical meat grinder schedule when talking about exactly that, with Indiana being able to go through the entire year, go 11-1, and not have a win over a team receiving a single vote in the AP poll. Buckeye Legion said peaks at BYU schedule. And man, you can see by the responses here, it did not go super well for him. It did not go super well for Buckeye Legion, who got ambushed there. And rightfully so. Now, Buckeye Legion seems pretty cool. I don't have any real issues there. And this, again, was not meant to be an attack on like Indiana, the merits of Indiana as a team. They very much should be in the playoff discussion and probably in. But objectively, if we're going to throw BYU schedule under the bus, let's get some facts. Let's get some facts, right? BYU not even playing, taking shade. All right. Strength of schedule right now. Where do you think BYU's strength of schedule is compared to Indiana? Well, if you said it were 42 spots higher than Indiana, you would be absolutely correct. 42 spots higher than Indiana. BYU's strength of schedule right now is 61. Indiana's is 103. Now, an Indiana fan will come back and say, okay, Indiana is winning games by an average of 33 points per game. We just saw BYU need this miracle drive to beat Oklahoma State. And look, I'm not going to argue. Nobody has been as dominant against their schedule this year as Indiana has. So they're doing what you should do if you're a playoff team against the 103rd ranked schedule in the country. But the point here was taking a pot shot at BYU and a swipe at BYU's schedule and just assuming, hey, BYU's not any good. And maybe this goes back to the guy earlier who said, hey, not name brands. And I kind of stood up for BYU's brand. But there's not enough respect out there for like the football program as a whole right now. And that is very true, where people just assume, it's just an awful schedule that BYU has. 61 that's not a great strength of schedule. I'm not trying to say that it is, but substantially better than some of what you're seeing in the Big Ten from teams that are getting an awful lot of attention right now. BYU, if you're going to look at like best wins on the schedule, right? Further break this down. Okay, John, strength of schedule, that's like an abstract number. Let me see the actual teams here. Let me judge based on the actual teams here. Okay, well, BYU has a blowout win by 29 points over K-State, who is still ranked 21st in the AP poll. BYU has a win at the number 13 team in the country, SMU. That's a road win at the number 13 team in the country. And if we get to the end of the year and BYU is unbeaten, they will have added a win at Arizona State, who is currently receiving votes. They would be the 32nd ranked team in the country. Meanwhile, Indiana, I mean, it's a debate. It's a pretty fierce debate here if you want to have it about what their best win is this year. Maybe because of sheer margin of victory, you would go with Nebraska. But other than that, like Washington, Michigan State, and again, margin of victory, they did absolutely pound Michigan State. But you're having a discussion there that is choosing between a lot of not a whole hell of a lot of mediocre teams, a lot of mid there on Indiana's schedule. So the stereotype of the Big Ten being top heavy with a lot of garbage in the rest of the conference, stuff that is by no means better than the Big 12, is very true. Now, the Big 12 doesn't have the number one team in the country. The Big 12 does not have Oregon. The Big 12 does not have Ohio State. I understand that. And that's the issue and perception of the conferences. But it doesn't mean that you won't get a lot of teams out of the Big 10 that are kind of inflated because of the schedules that this type of conference can produce, and people are going to throw them in the playoff, and Indiana being one of those this year. Whereas how much margin for error does BYU have to lose a game? I I get very nervous if it happens. I get very, very nervous if it happens. So that's a part of the reason that I really draw this distinction and bring this up to you. One, to show you that it's definitely out there. I mean, BYU is still getting some crap over what the schedule is and where they're at right now. And two, juxtaposing it with Indiana and the Big Ten and where they're coming from is pretty revealing, because I think if you asked Joe Blow, college football fan out there, hey, who has played a tougher schedule, Indiana or BYU, you would get most people saying, well, much like Buckeye Legion did. I mean, of course, Indiana's will be tougher than BYU. Au contraire, you got to actually look into it, man. You've got to actually look into it. Side note, like, how exciting and awesome would a BYU Indiana playoff game be? I would love to watch that. You know, we've had enough of the same 5 big brands playing all the time in the playoff. Get me a playoff game on campus somewhere. You know, give me a game at Lavelle Edwards between Indiana and BYU. It would probably is much more likely to be the other way around if that were to happen on campus somewhere. But give me one of those games, man. That's what the sport is all about. And that'd be great to see. We could settle it all out there on the field. My Twitter beef would matter no more. We wouldn't have to worry about any of that. BYU just needs to keep winning games. That's really the bottom line. And I have seen that sentiment a lot from BYU fans, particularly those who are paying really close attention to the tiebreaker scenarios that I was reviewing and then correcting and all that last week. BYU just needs to win games, let the chips fall where they may, and it's going to start with a massive one this week with the Holy War. And I am thrilled to watch that for the first time in the Big 12, and I do expect that, much like, honestly, it feels similar to the K-State-Kansas game, where Kansas had a bad year, had only won 2 games, but clearly still had a lot of talent and was competitive and a proud program based on what they've done the last few years. And they gave K-State all they could handle. I think Utah's a little more hamstrung. They don't obviously have the talent on offense that Kansas does, but they've still got plenty of talent within that program, and they've got a bye week to try and conjure up some sort of plan offensively. Would not shock me at all if that game winds up being pretty close. Wouldn't shock me at all. Let's get to James. James says, I hate that the Cats lost. Feel better soon. Oh, thank you, James. I'll be fine. I feel like I'm handling the loss much better than the collective K-State fan base is. I'm seeing a lot of Cat fans that are taking it very, very hard. So I'm doing okay. Maybe you guys can tell too, like the voice is still like a little iffy. Just feels like I've had like a cold all week or something. But I'm hanging in there, James. I'm hanging in there. We'll be okay. We will be okay. Pacific Northwest Ute. What's up, Pacific Northwest Ute? What do Oklahoma State and Utah have in common? Each has an active emeritus coach. Not saying for Witt to step down, but Utah D is number 1 while the offense leadership lacks. Yeah, I mean, pretty true. And that comment definitely syncs with what I read you from Gundy earlier, where I guess I paraphrased Gundy earlier, where he said, like, well, I'm not a big fan of our schemes right now. And it's like, okay, well then go fix it. But clearly he's given a lot of leeway to the coordinators there. Makes me really wonder, I mean, how interesting of an offseason this is going to be for Utah, Pacific Northwest Ute, because you've already got Morgan Scalley as the head coach in waiting. So is this the time? Does Whittingham want to ride off into the sunset on this? Cam Rising era ends, Kyle Whittingham era ends, just start things totally anew. I'd be interested to know what the opinion is of Utah fans on that. Like, are people on that train that they want Kyle to step down now? Like, I don't know. We'll see. Leadership lacks. It's tough to have a true freshman quarterback that you're playing. Like, it's a lot that can be an issue, and has sort of spiraled and just added up, I think, for Utah this season. Because I do remember, I mean, I know it was Southern Utah. It's not like it was a great opponent, but I watched a lot of that game when Cam Rising came back and the offense scored touchdown, 5 straight drives. And bam, it looked easy. It looked smooth. Everything was great. I have seen that. So thank you, Pacific Northwest Ute. I appreciate you.